Hi, I've been playing a bit too much of the new Legend of Zelda game. It is truly one of the best games that I've ever played. Because I haven't binged a game in probably a decade, but this game absolutely hooked me. So if you haven't played yet, it has a really fun mechanic where you can pick up any item and attach it to any other item. There are wheels, rockets, flamethrowers, sails, wings, balloons, and a heap of other items that you can use to assemble basically any vehicle that you dream up. So I had the idea to build a car that I built in the game, but in real life. Obviously not 1-to-1 scale, but maybe like a little remote control one that you can drive around on your desk or whatever. So when I had this idea months ago, it sounded easy enough, except now I need it in just over 1 week because I'm making it as a gift for a Zelda-obsessed friend. And I won't lie, I've had months to do this, but just haven't. I guess they say that diamonds are made under pressure, so let's do this. This video is sponsored by PCBWay, but more on them later. Okay, so the first step is to build the base car with the electronics and the wheels so that we can then build everything else around it. And I've been wanting to get more into electronics, so I thought this would have been a great learning opportunity for me. But now that I'm quickly running out of time to get this done, I decided to just buy an Arduino RC car kit online instead. Thankfully, I anticipated myself being a massive flop, and I've already ordered all the parts that I need around a month ago, so everything is already here, and I've already built the RC car kit. If I was to build this from scratch, it would have taken me so much longer, and it turned out to be way cheaper than buying the parts individually as well. This took a lot of the complexity out of the project, so now I can focus my time on the model making aspect. Now that we have the base, we need to decide what we're going to build around it. And because this is a kit, I don't have any say where the wheels or electronics are located, so I need to build something in the game that mostly resembles the same shape, if that makes sense. And this is what I came up with. Super basic, but it lets me hide the electronics in this section at the back, and it's also unmistakably from the game. And with that, I think that's already the end of the easy parts of this project, because tomorrow we start designing. Now it's time to start designing the parts, and I did this by first recreating the base electronics in my CAD software. It didn't need to be exact, just a crude recreation so I can get my bearings. From there, I broke it down into a few main components that I have to make. The first part is this large wooden piece. It has to be a weird shape so it can fit around the electronics of the wheels, but once it's assembled, it shouldn't look as weird, I hope. Then there's this top part with the 5 smaller planks around it, and I just made this simple box that I plan on gluing the planks to. Oh, and I should probably mention at this point that I plan on 3D printing these parts. For the wood parts, I'll be using this wood-colored filament that Zero sent me for a previous project. And to get the textured wood look, I found a simple wood texture online, converted it into a vector using Illustrator, then added it into my model in Fusion, and then I used that to cut away a tiny bit from the model, and yeah, now it looks like wood. This is all I have time for today. I work full-time and have so many other commitments, but tomorrow we'll finish off designing. Time happens so fast. So currently I plan on 3D printing all the parts tomorrow when I have some more time, then assembling all the parts the day after. I don't have very much time on my hands until tomorrow, so today that leaves me with designing the wheels and then polishing the rest of the parts as much as I can before I start 3D printing tomorrow. The kit already included these wheels and rubber tires, so rather than fully 3D printing the wheels that I design, I'll just create a thin shell that goes over the top of the wheels, which should save some filament and some printing time. The wheels ended up being a bit more complex than I anticipated, with 4 parts total for each wheel. There's this main piece which slides over the existing wheel, and I added quite a bit of detail using screenshots from the game as reference. Now, it's not an exact copy because I could be here for days if I wanted to recreate every little detail perfectly, but it captures the vibe and spirit of the game, which is what I was going for. Then there's this front piece which I made separate so that the whole thing is easier to 3D print without support, as well as this arrow piece which in the game points in the direction that the vehicle moves. I plan on embedding these ball bearings into each wheel. These are leftover from when I built a hexapod robot years ago, and they're actually just regular old skateboard bearings because they were just the cheapest and most readily available option. I was hoping that if I add more weight to the bottom of the arrow, that it will always stay parallel to the ground because it will be spinning independently inside the bearing. But I can already tell you that there'll be way too much friction and not enough weight for that, but I still think it's a nice detail to add regardless. Anyway, that's everything designed as well as I've had time for, so tomorrow I start 3D printing. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have everything I need to get this particular project done, but sometimes I need the real professionals to help out. This video is sponsored by PCBWay, who have a huge range of manufacturing services, including 3D printing, CNC machining, PCB prototyping, and assembly. In the past, they've helped me CNC machine this wallet that I designed in a previous video, as well as producing some PCB prototypes. But my favorite thing about them is their huge range of materials and color options that you can choose from. So if you need a helping hand with manufacturing, I've put a link to PCBWay below. It's now day 5, and I've come to the realization that I can't be a perfectionist. I need to aim for just good enough, or else I'll run out of time to get this project done. I'm just going to 3D print what I've got and hope it turns out okay, because past this point, I probably won't have any time to redo anything. And I'll be using 3 different filaments for this. This wood-colored filament that Zero sent me for a previous project, this dark green sparkly PLA that I purchased from Bamboo Lab, as well as this really moist gold PLA that I've had forever without properly storing. Oh, and I also had to print this adapter so it would fit in my AMS properly. And this should be enough to mostly match the car from the game. I could have added another brighter shade of green for these parts, but that's just more money that I don't feel like spending. Also, before anyone says anything, yes, I know that my print bed isn't clean. I'm just lazy. It hasn't caused any issues, and even if it does leave a bad finish, I promise no one will ever notice. All the wood-colored pieces were just a single color, so they printed really easily and without any issue. But the multicolor wheels took a lot of time because my AMS has probably a 20% chance of jamming every time it tries to do a color change, which meant it jammed a lot, but towards the end, it jammed every time it did a color change. I suspect it was because this spool is super light and it kept getting pulled out of alignment, then it would tangle up and then jam, which meant every time that happened, I'd have to go over to it and just push the filament through each time to get it going again. And I printed the wheels at night, so between around 3 AM and 4 AM, I was getting up every 15 minutes to fix it. It could have been worse, but in the end, I'm really happy with how all these parts came out. And here we are at the end of day 5, with hopefully everything we need to get this thing done tomorrow. You might be wondering how all these parts fit together, because same. So my crazy idea that might ruin everything is to use hot glue. And I bought this sparkly green hot glue. My thought process was that I could use it to imitate the green goo from the game. The color is slightly off, but it's kinda close. I just really hope that the hot glue doesn't melt and warp the plastic. But anyway, no more putting this off. I'm just going to start gluing and hope for the best. I think it looks really good. Well as it could look with what I'm working with. I also had to relocate the batteries to the bottom of the car because I sort of glued all the electronics in. The on-off switch is actually stuck inside where I can never access it again, so I turned it to be always on, and to turn it off you can just take out the batteries. I did warn you it was going to be a bit jank. Anyway, that's all I have time for tonight, which just leaves tomorrow where I can put the wheels on and make any small finishing touches, because tomorrow night I'm gifting it, so there's no making any more changes, it has to be done. So, I messed up. Do you see this flame emitter that I put on the front of my car in the game? The plan was to disassemble this lighter and to integrate the parts into a 3D printed part so it would actually have a little flame at the front. And I somehow just completely forgot about it, which means I just don't have time for it now. Instead, I'm just going to quickly design this wooden beam and the flame emitter and glue them on. It won't emit flames like in the game, but it's the best that I can do with the time that I have. And these parts are small, so it should only take about an hour or so to print. And I also quickly designed these extra parts for the back of the wheels, which I then super glued on, just so it looks a tiny bit better when assembled. And I also added this rock texture to the front and back of the wheels, using the same technique as the wood elements. To save more time, I printed the flame emitter as separate components for each color. Doing it as a single part with the AMS would have taken a whopping 7 hours, but my way, it's just 1 hour plus the small amount of time it took me to super glue it all together. The last step was to hot glue it onto the wooden beam and then onto the car. I placed it a little further back than in the game because I didn't want it to overextend, and I also touched up some other parts with extra hot glue, including fixing up one of the motors that became loose. I can't actually get to the screws to tighten it anymore, so hot glue will have to do. Then I could just pop the wheels on, insert the batteries, and yeah, it's done. I'm super proud of how this project turned out. Yes, it's a bit jank and isn't as polished as I would have liked, but for the time I put in, I'm really happy with the result. And for my first crack at the model making side of things, I'm really pleased with how it captures the spirit of the game. Except it didn't work. I charged the batteries, but it still didn't work. And at this point, I was fully convinced I had damaged the cable somehow while making it. But thankfully, I discovered the wheels were just rubbing up against the side of the car, so I just had to slide them over a little bit to stop the friction from interfering, and now it works. It does have a hard time turning, but it's a lot better on smooth surfaces, so I'm calling it a win.
Oh!
And now there's just one more thing that I need to do before I gift this to my friend. How cool would this have been if it was integrated properly? I'm a bit disappointed that I forgot and then didn't have time to, but it is what it is, and it's probably a lot safer without the flame. Anyway, it's getting late, and now the only thing left to do tonight is to give it away. It's now the day after, and they seem to really enjoy my gift yesterday. I think this project was really worth the effort for me. Now, for a gift for the rest of you, I wasn't sure if I was going to publish these files since you need to also buy the RC car kit, and I wasn't sure if people actually wanted to do that, but I'm doing it anyway with two separate versions. Version 1 will be the original files fused with the RC kit electronics and the bearings that I used in this video, and I'm working on an updated version that doesn't need any additional parts. It'll just be a toy that you can push around with no electronics, bearings, or hot glue. I think people will appreciate that you can just 3D print it without buying anything else. Now, I haven't actually finished version 2 yet because editing this video is taking up all of my time, but keep an eye on my Printables, Maker World, or Thangs accounts, and hopefully you'll see it, unless Nintendo has other plans.